There's this assumption that once you've built one successful business, the next one should be easier. And while experience does help, that assumption will humble you very quickly. Today, we're talking about what actually transfers when you own multiple businesses and what absolutely does not. I'm going to share what surprised me the most, what buying the salon as an asset purchase taught me. Starting this podcast was another business. So, the ins and outs of it. And really what I wish more business owners understood before adding another revenue stream.
Hey there, my little biz besties. Welcome back to In Good Company, where real entrepreneurs share real growth stories. Thanks for liking and subscribing to my channel. Let's get into it.
Hey friends, welcome back to In Good Company. Today's another solo episode, and I want to start by saying this one comes from lived experience. From me to you, straight from the source. I am recording this during our Snowmageddon. So if you see dogs, if you see kids, just mind your business. Okay? Mind your business. Moving on. If you've ever thought about starting a second business or buying a business, or you already own more than one and you've caught yourself thinking, why does this feel harder than I expected? This episode is for you. For anybody else that's like, I can't relate, just hang in there. I always try to throw in some relatable stuff. So here we go. There's this assumption that once you've built one successful business, the next one should be easier. And while experience does help, that assumption will humble you very quickly. Today, we're talking about what actually transfers when you own multiple businesses and what absolutely does not. I'm going to share what surprised me the most, what buying the salon as an asset purchase taught me. Starting this podcast was another business. So, the ins and outs of it. And really what I wish more business owners understood before adding another revenue stream. We hear a lot of TikTok chat, how easy it is to buy a business, start a business, add another revenue stream. And I want us to just be real for a little bit. Okay. So take a deep breath. We're going to move slowly, but let's get into it. So let's start with the biggest myth, the biggest misconception that I see. So people will say, I've done this before, so the next business will be easier. Or I've already done this. Like, it's not a big deal. What is true is that you're more confident. 100%. The first business I started when I started my accounting firm, I questioned everything. Like every little thing I questioned. And I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel confident showing up. What's not true is that the work magically decreases. That is so far from the truth. Every business has its own rhythm, has its own systems, its own people problems, its own cash flow, personality. They're all different. From my experience, every business I started, while they made sense to me internally, and meaning like in my head, Every single one had its own system, its own people problems, and its own cash flow personality. Okay. They were all very different, and none of them decreased my work by any means. Experience doesn't mean you get to skip the work. It means you're better equipped to ask better questions. You don't copy and paste success. You translate it. So when I started my firm, everything was new. I could tell you how to start your own business. I could tell you the things that mattered. I could tell you the things that didn't matter. But when you're doing it yourself, oh my goodness, you suddenly forget everything you know. It's the weirdest thing. You suddenly realize, oh, it's different when it's your own. You question everything you do. You question every decision you make. You can Google, what are the best systems to start an accounting firm? And you're going to get overwhelmed because there are so many. You have to find what works for you. And you don't know that yet. Humbling. Same with the salon. When I bought the salon, I thought, well, I'll just use the systems I already have. Wrong-o. This business required entirely different systems, had its own set of people problems that I will go into later, and had its own cash flow personality. I mean, mind blown. So yes, you are more confident when you show up. Yes, you feel better making decisions, but it's a lot of work. Okay, a lot of work. So let's move on, because I really want to go into those in detail, but I want this flow to feel good. Now let's talk about what does transfer across businesses, because some things absolutely do. The first is decision-making confidence. I kind of mentioned that before, so I want to really dive into this. You don't spiral as long. You don't second guess every move. You decide faster and you recover faster if something doesn't work. I remember with starting my first business, I mentioned that every decision felt like life or death. And I mean every single one. From my logo to my website, to pricing, to what project management software should I use? What marketing strategy should I do? And of course, you're doing all this alone. Most of the time you're doing all this alone when you start. You're a one-man show. And so when you are doing your own thing, you don't have a lot of experience or people to kind of bounce ideas off of. At least I didn't. So every little tweak in the logo that I made was from indecisiveness. I felt like having a strong logo means I will be successful or I won't. Now, looking back, I realize you can change your logo. Like, it's not a big deal. You can have a website or not. Not a huge deal. I believe websites serve a purpose. And throughout the years, we have changed our branding. We have changed our website. But to start, you don't need to worry about that. I did. I worried a lot. I did a lot of spiraling. But those are just things you learn the longer you do it. The second kind of thing that transfers across businesses is pattern recognition. So you start noticing the same red flag showing up: cash flow issues, burnout, misalignment, and you catch them earlier. So when you are starting from the ground, when you have nothing, when you have no investors, when you have no partners, when it's just you, you might have some cash flow issues because it's just you. And you haven't quite figured out like packages or pricing. I didn't open a bank account with this huge deposit. I opened it with a huge amount of hope and prayer. And that doesn't pay the bills. So that is something that I felt with every single business. You know, when I started the podcast, I didn't start with a bunch of money. When I bought the salon, I had purchase money and then realized, there's a lot more expenses. And I was using personal money for a little while. So it's all going to be the same. When it comes to burnout, I have felt on the brink of burnout with every single business. And they all looked differently, but they all felt the same. They all had different symptoms, but they all felt the same. So, I caution you, if you have started a business and you already feel close to burnout, the absolute worst thing you can do to fix that burnout is to start another business. Like, that seems like common sense. It's not. So I encourage you, I beg you, please try and recognize your signs. Know yourself, know your body. Because starting another business on the brink of burnout with a previous business is not a good way to start. You feel it, your clients feel it, your customers feel it, your team feels it. That's not a very stable feeling. Misalignment, I want to touch on that. So many times in all of my businesses, there has been a point of misalignment. Now, they all looked differently. They all required me to react differently. But there was a point in every single one that I had to stop and say, oh, this isn't working. This doesn't feel like what I wanted to do. This is not part of the vision. These are not the people I wanted to work with. These are not the packages that I wanted to sell. These are not the type of people that I wanted to interview. So different situations, but there was a point in every single one. I want to talk about the misalignment feeling I had with the salon. So, and the reason I say that, the reason I want to touch on the salon is because, fun fact about me, I have my master cosmetologist license. Okay. So I am no stranger to the beauty world. Okay. To that entire industry. I'm no stranger. I got my master cosmetologist license in Athens, Georgia. I did hair for several years, mostly event hair. So if anyone's listening and they're like, oh my gosh, that's why you bought a salon, it all makes sense. You're welcome. I loved it. I did hair and makeup for, I started in a local salon in Watkinsville, Georgia, and I loved it. I loved the people. The salon was beautiful. It was a very small town salon, so a lot of layers and partial highlights. A few fun colors, but not a lot. But it was a great experience. I started as the receptionist. I became a junior stylist, and then I finished school and I went out and did some other things. So I worked for an on-site event company, and we did weddings, pageants, proms, homecomings. We did some film. It was really cool. I actually got to meet some pretty cool people. Film was really big in Atlanta at that time. But it was so fun. It was such a good experience. I loved working with brides. I loved working with, teenagers for events. It was just beautiful. When I moved from Georgia to Kentucky, I didn't transfer my license. Right. So I didn't do hair when I moved. I regret that. I do regret that. I still did hair for friends and family, but I didn't want to renew my license. That was when I had finished accounting school and whatever. And I'm going on a little bit of a rant, but it does matter. I promise. Stick with me. When I decided not to do hair, I felt this tiny, tiny void of something. I knew I didn't want to go behind the chair. I knew like that's not where I'm at anymore. But I missed being in the world of hair. So, I waited and I waited and I waited. And then 2025 hit and I knew I wanted to buy a business. I had it in my mind. I'm a big Cody Sanchez fan. And I said, I want to buy a business. I just don't know what. And she always says, like, buy things you know. And then the salon, local salon was for sale. And I went and visited it. It was in a good location. And it was so cute. There were some things I saw like, oh, I would probably change that decor. Or, I like the vibes, okay? There were stylists that worked there already. And they seemed nice enough. They seemed nice. Now, with most hair salons, there was some foundational drama. But I was thinking, oh, not me. I've been working by myself for years. Like, I don't bring drama. And so I bought the salon. And within my first 30 days, I started noticing that the drama was bleeding into my life. I started noticing that if I don't get ahead of this, if I don't get a hold of the type of people I want to work in this salon, I changed the name, I changed some prices, like I was building the website, like doing all the things, right? But the problem was the people. I was not aligned with these people that were in the salon. We had very different ideas of what a positive and healthy work environment looked like. So within 30 days, I could feel it. There was this like achy feeling of misalignment. And this being my first salon, I was so torn. I questioned if I did the right thing. I didn't want to get rid of everybody because that's crazy. So what I did was I created a culture contract, and I got this idea from another local salon owner. She kind of we're friends, and she kind of gave me this idea. And she said, if you have booth renters, you can't tell them their hours, you can't tell them their prices. You can have them sign a contract, a culture contract. So I put one together, and I basically said, these are the things that are allowed. Kindness, respect, cleaning up after yourself, very what I thought basic things. And I was hoping this would fix the misalignment. Like they would be like, yeah, girl, my bad. I wasn't even myself. But now that you gave me this culture contract, everything's better. What ended up happening is every single person in that salon didn't want to sign that contract. They looked at that contract as an out. So within 60 days of buying a salon, a profitable salon, every single worker quit. Now, initially, I was panicking. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Now it has no income. I just bought the salon and asked these grown women to act right, and they didn't like that. Oh my gosh, what does that say about me? A few weeks go by, and I think maybe I'll ask for them to come back, but I didn't do anything because my gut, God, was like, just wait. I know it feels hard right now, but just wait. I waited. Now the salon is full again with beautiful people that all signed the contract. So that misalignment it forced me to lose income for a few months, gave me space to reflect on exactly what I want to see in the salon, and then welcome more aligned people. Now, I'd be lying if I said it felt easy. There's a lot of times that I was praying and I was like, God, what is happening? What are you doing? Like, I know you got a plan and all, but like, maybe tell me this plan. Maybe tell me one thing. And he was like, no, child. So scary. But that feeling of misalignment was so heavy, I could not ignore it. And now I can't imagine what the salon would look like if I didn't make those moves. So long walk for a drink of water, but let's go to the next one. So it's something else that transfers across businesses. The third is leadership instinct. Very much ties into what I just said. You get better at knowing when to step in and when to step back. You stop trying to control everything and you really start focusing on direction. I do this every day. Every day. There were so many times when I started hiring a team for our accounting firm. We had team meetings every week and I would go through every single client. Now at the time, we had enough clients that I could get through it in an hour. But as time went on, I realized I don't need to know until I need to know. Like, I have a CFO. She's my best friend. I trust her with everything. Like, I trust her. Why do I need to go through every client if they're not telling me there's a problem? I don't. I don't need to control every single step of this process. So being able to step back, being able to allow the team to do what they were hired to do and that they're good at, and trusting my CFO gave me so much peace. And because of that, I have transferred that from business to business. When I hire people for a business, any of the businesses, I trust them enough to make their own decisions because they should be aligned with the goals. So, the fourth is financial literacy, which sounds so silly coming from me. Of course I should speak financials very well, right? I'm an accountant, duh. But when it's your own thing, suddenly you forget everything you know. You understand the difference between revenue and profit. You learn that very quickly. I started to respect cash flow. I started to know that numbers tell a story, whether I like this story or not. I started looking at what is my break-even point and then when am I profiting? Anytime I would spend money, I didn't just say, oh my gosh, there's like $20,000 in the bank account, I'm rich. No, I would think, what do I need in this bank account? What's profit? What's operating expenses? What's tax expenses? Very different outlook. And that carries over into my other businesses now. The fifth thing that transfers is boundaries. Y'all know I like talking about boundaries. You say no faster. You protect your energy sooner. You stop trying to prove yourself. And I'm taking a beat because boundaries is one of my favorite things to talk about. And there's a reason I like to talk about it. It's to remind myself. It's to tell myself that boundaries are normal. Boundaries are healthy. They're okay. It's okay to say no. No is a complete sentence. I don't have to explain it. It's okay to know I don't have the energy to do that, so it's a no. And now I know that a lot faster. When you own multiple businesses, time is sacred. And if you don't protect it, You're going to regret it. You're going to hate the businesses you have. You stop trying to prove yourself because you don't have to anymore. When I bought the salon, I got so many, what's the right word to say? Doubt thrown my way. Why would you buy a salon? Why would you spend money on something like that? What do you know about running a salon? Why? That's crazy. Don't you have enough going on? Ashley, you already have other successful businesses. Why would you do that? Are you just bored? And the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And it was not just it wasn't strangers that said that. It was people in my circles, people I know, like, and trust. And sometimes those questions would make me doubt myself because I was already going through it. I told y'all, like, I lost everybody in like 60 days. And so those questions would get in my head and I would think, what am I doing? But then I would stop and I would think, my decisions don't have to make sense to you. Because you know who never one time doubted me? My husband. Not one time did he doubt me. You know why? Because he has historical data. He's seen me succeed. So if you you want to make a move and you've got all this background noise of people saying, why would you do that? You have a really stable job. Why would you quit that and start your own business? Now, I'm not suggesting everybody do that. But if you got people in the background thinking they need to tell you what you should do, I am telling you, only you know what's good for you. People don't have to understand it. It's better if they don't. Experience didn't make me fearless. It made me more intentional. Now, let's talk about what does not transfer, because this is where most people get tripped up. The first thing that does not transfer is systems. Every business needs its own system. What works beautifully in one business will probably break another. The second thing that doesn't transfer is time expectations. You don't magically get more hours just because you're experienced. If anything, your time becomes more valuable and more limited. And woo, I could have a whole episode on that. I did not know buying a salon meant I would be going to a salon every day. And that was a shock to me. Now that's changed because I had to align myself with the goals and figure out my boundaries. But for a while there, I thought, oh my God, what have I done? So the third thing is emotional bandwidth. You thought I was going to say damage, didn't you? The third thing is emotional bandwidth. Every business takes emotional energy, even when it's profitable. Even when it's going well, it's taking something from you, okay? The fourth thing is team dynamics. People problems don't scale neatly. Each team requires leadership, clarity, and communication. Every team has different needs, but they need leadership, they need clarity, and they need communication. And I kind of talked about the salon team. I think I was more devastated because I have a team with my firm. So why am I feeling insecure about building another team? I've done it. I'm doing a good job. Now, I didn't do it alone. Like I mentioned, my CFO is like a huge part of that. But I thought, well, I did it once. I can do it again. No. They're all different. So the fifth thing that does not transfer is cash flow. One business cannot casually support another without intention. Owning multiple businesses doesn't automatically create freedom. Without structure, it creates pressure. Let's talk about the salon asset purchase. I get asked this a lot, and I'm an open book. Unless you're a meanie, because I'm not going to tell you anything. Just kidding. No, not kidding. So, buying the salon as an asset purchase really drove those things I mentioned home for me. I didn't walk into this decision to buy emotionally. I walked into it strategically. And still there were assumptions. I assumed some things would be easier because I had experience. What actually happened is it wasn't easier. But I asked better questions, not fewer ones. Staffing, scheduling, margins, visibility, all those things felt more important than they did when I started the firm, because I knew those were the things I needed to keep top of mind. Experience didn't simplify the work, it sharpened my awareness. And that's what the CEO mindset really looks like. Clarity over comfort. If you can hear a small child in the background, I mentioned before, kids and dogs around me. They could give a flip if I'm recording. So.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Oh, he's just doing some math. Look at him go. Let's move on. Let's talk about when multiple businesses help versus maybe hurt. Multiple businesses can help when they're intentional. They help when one stabilizes cash flow, one fuels creativity, you have strong operators, and your boundaries are clear. They hurt when you're chasing distraction. One business is covering another's leaks. You're avoiding fixing core issues, or everything still depends on you. That goes into all the time things I talked about. More businesses won't fix a broken foundation. They will expose it wide open. And that might not seem like, oh, well, I need to know if there's a leak and I need to know, I need to know these things. You should know those things before you buy another business. Just telling you, sis, it doesn't get easier. So at some point, a shift will happen. You stop being the CEO of one business and you start becoming the CEO of a portfolio. That means you start asking what stays, what grows, what exits. You evaluate return, not just financially, but emotionally and energetically. My job isn't to run everything. My job is to decide what deserves to exist. I want to tell you a really quick story about a person that came to us, came to the accounting firm and wanted us to help start some businesses for them. Now, this is nothing new. Like, we help people start their businesses frequently. It's not a new thing. Most of the time, we start one business for someone. They say, I have an idea. I want to start, I want to start a landscaping business and I need you to help me do that. We're like, cool, we'll get you an EIN. We'll register you with the state. Like we'll open the tax accounts. Like, gotcha. This person came to us and was like, I want you to start a business for me. And we were like, gotcha. We do this all the time. And they said, actually, I have 3. I want to start 3 at a time. And we were like, oh, a little unusual. Okay. So we started opening these 3 businesses for her. And super sweet person, good intentions. But we had a feeling. Can't describe it. We didn't turn it down because we were like, well, this is what we do. Like, we start businesses for people. Why wouldn't we do this? But I had this feeling that for someone to start 3 at one time could be problematic. Now, as an accountant, it's not my job to ask her, what about your emotions? What about your capacity? Do you have boundaries? Do you have plans? My job was to set it up. The project ended up taking longer than we thought. Shocker, because it was 3 at one time. There ended up being a misspelling in the name. To her, that felt like the biggest deal, which I get. Within 6 months, she came back to us and said, I need you to close them now. I just want to have one open. Now, this was a very high-strung, emotional person. So she didn't say it like that. She said it very differently. But what I can guess happened was we opened 3 businesses. The overwhelm kicked in and she could only focus on one at a time, which meant the other 2 were not growing. The other 2 were not healthy. And she said, well, I just want to close it. Now she was shooketh when we told her we charged for that. She could not believe it. Little PSA, when people think it won't even take you that long, why would you charge? Girl, just because it won't take that long, I still have to pay for the payroll. Just because you think it won't take that long does not mean we should do it for free. So anyways, just an example, good intentions, but you have to give the business what it deserves from the beginning. So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a few questions. You don't need to answer them all today. Just notice what comes up. Am I adding another business out of strategy or avoidance? Which skills truly transfer from me and which don't? What would break if I added another business tomorrow? Is each business sustainable on its own? Am I building assets or creating more jobs for myself? That last one hits, doesn't it? It hits me. It gets me in my feels. So here's the takeaway. Owning multiple businesses isn't about doing more. It's about thinking differently. Experience helps. Confidence grows. But structure is what makes it sustainable. If this episode resonated with you, in any way and you're considering adding another business or trying to make sense of the ones you already own, slow down before you speed up. You'll find resources and ways to connect with us in the show notes. But thank you for spending this time with me. And if this episode helped you see your business just a little differently, share it with another owner who's thinking about their next move. I know personally, I have been there. I would not be where I am today if I didn't have the support system I have. And I know I am so blessed for that. I wanted to take just a tiny second to really rave about my husband. Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, what? Just like, get out of it. It's fine. You don't have to listen. My husband is my biggest supporter. I know a lot of people don't have that. I've gotten on calls with people before and they say, oh, I have to ask my husband. And I don't know what that feels like because he trusts me. And what you guys don't see is, Richard cheering me on in the background. The nights where I'm questioning literally everything I'm doing all the time. And he listens and responds and tells me I'm great and tells me I'm smart and tells me all these things. There have been times that he says, it sounds like you're going to run out of mental capacity here. I'm like, no, I'm not. And he's like, all right. So I think sometimes people like to rave about the supporters in their life that just tell them how great they are and tell them they can do anything and they're so smart, like I just did. But the other part of this is when I question myself, when I come to husband with an idea, the other part of good support is when they tell you it's not a good idea. I'm not talking about devil's advocate. I'm not, because I do that a lot. I'm so annoying with that. I'm talking about someone who knows you to your core and knows that you're an idea person. I love coming up with ideas for businesses. I've talked about this with the previous guest, Katie Hutchinson, and I told her every time I think I'm good at something, I want to start a business. Obviously, that came after I started my first because, like I mentioned, you start one, you think you can do all of them. And I've come to husband and I'm like, you know what? I should start a t-shirt business. Like, I think I'd be really good at that. And he's like, babe, you're so smart. You're so beautiful. And I'm like, thank you. And he's like, but this is a bad idea. So good support means obviously telling you you're pretty all the time, but telling you when it's a bad idea in a loving way. It's not like he's saying you shouldn't start a t-shirt business because you suck. It's, babe, when are you going to have time for that? And I'm like, oh, you're right. So find your person. You can't have mine, but find one that works for you. And until next time, you're in good company.
If I could do it all over again, there'd be no wish I would, should have been. Spend more time with my family and friends. If I could do it all over again, I'd wake up early.